Hello and welcome back to the beginning of the process of restoring this Fokker DR1. Now, in the last video I actually removed the covering, and in doing so I've discovered that this wing and the bottom wing are fine. I'm very pleased with them. In fact, they're flat with no discernible warps. The top wing is a very different matter. But in the process of stripping this down, I've also discovered something else, and that is the origins of this model. As I said before, it's not a kit. There are no markings on it at all. There are no printed numbers, no identification of the formers inside. I've had a good look. It's been built from plans. And that was a little bit of a puzzlement, because when I searched for plans to try and make sense of what it was, and going off the size of the wing, it's 1/4 scale, but it's not of any drawings I can find of a Fokker DR1. However, in the process of searching, I think I've discovered what it actually is. It's a flare baronet that's been scaled up to make it 1/4 size. And that's the cause, I think, of one or two of the issues with this model. Obviously, the flare kits are extremely good model kits if you can get your hands on them. Sadly, the company no longer exists, although there are a number of pop-up short kits being produced. If you're interested, have a look at the Flare Facebook site and you might find something that would interest you. I've got a couple of Flare models. I've got a SE5A, and I've also got a Fokker D7 and another kit in a box unstarted, and they are both superb flying models. So there are some compromises to scale to actually produce a workable day-to-day semi-scale sports model. And that's what this is, but on a much bigger scale. It isn't a true scale model, but it's a representation of a Fokker triplane. There are a number of things that I think I can do to improve the scale appearance of the model. And one of the most obvious ones is in this area. So you can see that I've actually damaged the cowling area as I've been ripping covering off, but to a certain extent that was deliberate, because I'm going to replace it with plywood decking here, and this bit at the back needs to be firmed up. It was only balsa, it needs to be made out of ply. But the main point is, on the original prototype, this area was cut out to give better visibility for the pilot. And that wouldn't be a major thing to modify this middle wing. I have said that the middle wing itself is in good nick. It's square and it's flat, but with the addition of that cutout, I think I'll get a more true feel of a Fokker triplane. I'll just pause it a second to show you something I've found on AutoZone. Here we go then. I've discovered these plans on AutoZone, and they are built to a scale of 1/4 inch to an inch, so 1/4 scale. And there are many features that are the same, but obviously some that are different. So one that I've just noted, this, I've only printed half of the page for some reason. This bottom image that I'm showing you now is the middle wing, and you can see the cutout that's been added so that the pilot would get a better view. And I think the addition of that feature onto this part of the model will greatly enhance its appearance. So that's something I'm going to do to that middle wing. The upper wing, I'll show you that, is slightly different in that the ailerons on this drawing, which I'm taking to be a truer representation, are actually bigger, and the more pronounced the step out from the upper wing is more noticeable. On this one, you can see that they don't seem to step out as much and they're not as deep as they are on this image. So I'm going to, when I rebuild the upper wing, because they'll certainly need to be rebuilt, I'm going to change the design slightly. Now I did say that this was a scaled up version of the flare baronet, and I think the problem with that is it's been scaled up in size but not in the structure. No account's been taken of strengthening the structure to take a bigger model. For example, there's a lot of flex in this wing in parts, partly because they've webbed just one side, and for the additional extra weight, minimal, of webbing the other side of these spars, you'd get a much more rigid wing. For some reason, it's badly warped here, I think it's more to do with storage actually, parts of the upper wing haven't been packed between the top and the bottom. So what I intend to do is actually just to build a more scale-like upper wing, perhaps with the capping on the upper edge as well, just to add to the strength, and it'll add a little bit more weight, sure, but it'll make a much stronger wing. So there are two tasks that I'm going to have to tackle. The fuselage itself, although I haven't started ripping the covering off, the fuselage from an examination from underneath and internally is spot on. And it won't need a lot of work actually to bring that up to scratch. You can see that these control surfaces have seen better days, and this is rather wobbly. This will all be stripped, and I know from just the feel of it that if I actually strengthen it with additional supports as in this drawing, I'll end up with a much stronger tail surface. So it's a long-term project this, but one I'm willing to tackle. The other thing that I've noticed, these, one of them's broke here, these Cabine air struts are actually just in wood. Do it that way, you might see them better. They're just in wood. And I'm certain that this model will inevitably flip over onto its back. They're just notorious for it. And it'll take some time to get it right. And I will flip this model, I'm certain I will. And that's just asking for trouble. So I'm going to replace all of these, because the top wing's got to come off. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to replace these with a wire and wood structure that'll be still bolted to these fixing points, and I'll still retain the flare approach of having the upper wing and the middle wing tied together. This is how I propose doing it. So the top wing's going to be scrapped, and that means I can cut out this area here to release this upright, this spar. That'll remain on the middle wing. I don't need to take it out of here. I'm happy with the middle wings flat, but I can still pin it to the board when I'm covering it, more of that in a second, and leave these hanging over the edge of the board. And then these bolt on to the lower wing, which is also flat and true, and there's 4 bolts to locate it onto this spar. They could be replaced by nylon bolts, which are better anyway because they don't seem to vibrate loose as much. That will mean I can set these wings to the correct incidence, and I can set the top wing accordingly. Now, from what I understand, the wing incident for the Fokker triplane, or a method that's worked quite well for people in the past, is to set them as follows: +1 degree, 0 degrees, -1 degree. And the idea of that is, by setting them up in that way, the first wing to stall is the lower wing. Then the middle wing, though I do understand there's an awful lot of lift lost because of interference. And the upper wing, because it's at a -1 degree setup, it's the last to stall. And that'll hopefully provide for a tamer flight characteristics of this model. It's a big beast, and although I have the Solartex to do it, I'm going to use the Solartex that I do have for other projects. For example, the Cirrus Moth is going to be covered in a stash of Solartex that I have. This model is going to be covered in 100% polyester and doped in the same way that I did for the Junkmeister and for the Falcon. It's a big model. It'll lend an awful lot of strength to the structure, and I'm happy working with it. It works well. The whole frame will be Mod Podged. Then the covering will be applied and ironed on, and I'll repeat the whole process so people who haven't seen it before can see how it's done. I hope that little talk through gives you an idea of how I'm going to approach this. It's going to take some time. I've got too many other projects on the go to rush at it, and I don't intend doing so. I don't want to spend all of my time on this, but this is going to fly. I'm determined that that's going to happen. I do need to source an engine, and I think it's going to need to be 25cc to 30cc from what I've read about triplanes of this sort of size. I haven't got one yet. I'm on the lookout for one, so I'll have to keep my ear to the ground. But there it is. It's such an iconic plane in a multitude of colour schemes. It will not be all red, I can guarantee that. I want it to be a little bit different, and I want to have a bit of fun with applying a nice finish to it. So next task perhaps will be, well, it will be to strip off the tail surfaces, uncover them, and then the fuselage, and then I've got to work out where to store this while the project's ongoing. I hope you've enjoyed that little ramble. It's basically all it is, a ramble. How I'm going to adapt some scale drawings to upscale this from a sports plane to a nicer sports plane. It'll still not be a scale model, but it'll be a fun, big beast of a plane to take up to the strip. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this rambling or you want to see more of this sort of thing, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for looking in. Bye now.